Welcome to the Soul Tribe Podcast. The Soul Tribe Podcast was created to help you navigate through the world of spirituality, wellness, and self-development in an easy, grounded, and relatable way. We break down everything from the Akashic Records, manifesting, spirituality, and so much more. We want to help expand your boundaries and bring the spiritual world to you in a fun and easy way. Get ready to be inspired with tips, tools, and easy to digest information. Let's do this. Welcome back to the Soul Tribe Podcast, everybody. Today is a solo episode with me, Lorena. I kind of talked to Lou the other day and I was like, you know what? I want to do an Akashic Record Q&A episode. This episode will probably be a two-part series just because I might get more questions and I want to kind of make sure that I answer as many as I can. So I kind of did a post on Instagram. I did a post on the Soul Tribe Podcast Instagram. I did one on my Instagram and got some really, really good questions. And I think this will help clear up a lot of stuff. If maybe some of these answers that you get bring up more questions, please message me, please email me. My contact information will be on the show notes. You can contact me either through my contact form or through DM on Instagram. I always like to send kind of voice notes on Instagram. I always find that's really fun for connecting with people. So yeah, the idea here is just to answer some questions. I've obviously opened my own Akashic Records, as I always do when I do these podcast episodes. And yeah, I want to just first of all remind everybody that Lucy and I each open people's Akashic Records, right? So we're both Akashic Record readers. We do dual Akashic Record readings where we both go on a call with somebody and open their records at the same time and both channel. And we teach the Akashic Records. So we teach Akashic Records Level 1, which is opening your own records, and that would be the first step. And then we also teach Akashic Records Level 2, which is opening other people's Akashic Records, which is my passion. It's what I love. It's how I feel like I can help people the most. And it's something that if you do feel called to, if you get that intuitive hit, I would just say go for it. Because I knew in my gut, I knew the moment I was ready for that. And some people, I don't know if this is within the questions because I haven't put them in any specific order, but I'm just going to go in the order that I have here. But, sometimes people ask about how much time do you have to wait between level 1 and level 2? And that is very personal. That is very personal because for me, I had done Akashic Records Level 1 when I was in my 20s, maybe 25, let's say, or 30. I don't even remember. And spent years just opening them randomly. I felt like I couldn't connect, but I would still use them in specific situations and moments that I felt that helped bring a sense of calm and peace and expansion. Or when I was studying, I use them for very just kind of everyday things, right? But never felt like I could channel. And then years later, a couple years ago, more than a couple years ago, it's probably 4 or 5 years ago now, I had the urge to redo Level 1. So I redid Akashic Records Level 1 and went straight to do Akashic Records Level 2 because I got that message. I was like, I could have just gone into Level 2, but I figured, wait, let me redo Level 1 because I feel like I need a refresher. And just to make sure that I'm okay for Level 2, and I went straight into Level 2. That was my story, but also I had done Akashic Records Level 1 years ago. And even though I felt like I wasn't channeling, I was. It's just I wasn't trusting the messages. And if you guys have heard one of the first ever episodes where Lucy and I each tell our story, you'll get a really good idea of what it was like for me and what kind of brought me down this path of helping others and the Akashic Records and all that. So I'll definitely try to see if I can link that episode to this episode so you guys can check it out. But let's not wait any longer. Let's get started. So I guess that was kind of a question that I felt that was important to answer because people do ask that. But the first question is, how do you receive messages during a reading? Is it images you see in your mind or words? It's all of it. So sometimes you'll hear me talk on the podcast how when I started, it was especially, I'm going to talk about really, I think I should really separate this into like level 1 and level 2. So opening my own and opening others. So when I open my own records, I do not get images generally. It is just words that come into my mind that I write down or I type up or I say out loud. Like I'll channel them directly into an audio or a voice note. So that's on one hand. Level 2, which is opening other people's Akashic records, that's a whole different ballgame. And it's something we really do teach in level 2, that it's when you are a channel, your channel morphs, it changes, you start to understand yourself more. And as a channel, you become more attuned to the energy of the Akashic record. So for me, when I started, it was just a lot of words. I would get little visions here and there, like a thing, like an object. And then for me, like where I get most of the images is past lives. When I connect with people, like if somebody comes to a reading and asks me, hey, I want to ask about this relationship with my father, for example, and they'll give me the person's name. I connect with names very strongly through the Akashic records. And I will get information. I'll kind of see them. They'll feed me information in the mind sense of their personality. And sometimes I'll feel. So this is my main thing, is feeling. When I start a reading, the first thing I connect with is a feeling. So for example, when I connect, I'll say, I feel this in my body, or I feel that you're feeling this. This is how you're feeling. And the person will be like, yeah. And then that'll turn into words, and that can come into images. So for me, it's all three: feeling, images, and just words. It's a lot of different ways that it comes through. And the way that they help me understand it is the emotion is like, it's like the icebreaker, right? The emotion for me is where I connect with the person and understand what they're going through, and where the words start like trickling in so that I can just talk a lot. I'm not a big talker. If you guys know me, any of you that know me in person, no, I'm not a big talker. Like I don't just talk a lot. So with readings, it's weird that I use my voice so much. And that's a big part of my journey here of like finding my voice and all that. So it has helped me in that sense. But with readings, you as a channel, you definitely start with something. You always have like a sense, one that becomes kind of like the strongest sense that you can lean on when you become a reader. And this could be even for like psychics, or intuitives, or even just like healers, right? Where you'll get a knowing, right? For the Akashic records, I don't feel knowings unless we're talking about like energies, right? The energies of knowings come through, for example, when they're giving me paths for the person. It feels like this path is more aligned. So it feels like a knowing in a sense, but it's still energetic, and there's free will. We always talk about free will with the Akashic records. But the images, so I'll explain what I see with the images. Like if it's a past life, they'll show me. It's like in your mind's eye, like you're imagining, like when you're reading a book and you see the whole scene play out in your mind, in your own mind, right? And I'll see that. I'll see what the person might be wearing. It usually comes, and this is something new that I've connected with. When I see things from the past or past lives, they come to my left. So I'll tend to look to the left in my reading. If it's present, it's in front of me. And if it's the future, it's to the right. The future in the sense of like possibilities and probabilities. Because like I said, the Akashic records are all about free will, right? So the images feel like a movie a little bit, and they're very like quick. They're so quick. Like it's so hard like to sustain that image. And once you start talking, it's like it feels like it evaporates. Like that's how I can explain it. And I can only speak from my own experience. Maybe Lou can answer some of these questions another day, but she's way more visual. Lou even like will close her eyes during readings sometimes because she's seeing so much and she needs to like focus her energy to be able to explain what's coming through for her. But the emotional side, what I feel in my body, sometimes I'll feel physical symptoms in my body that as soon as I recognize them, and voice them, they go away. But for example, like shortness of breath, like pain in my chest, the solar plexus, my limbs, sometimes headache, that comes through a lot when a person's very mental, they're very in their ego, their mind, or there's something going on in their life where they're overthinking, and usually that reading turns into something where they're trying to figure something out or make a decision. So the main thing I want to like make sure that kind of I explain here or express is my journey with it, because I definitely had a journey of morphing like into different ways of channeling on its own. Like I did not control it. I didn't expect it. I didn't force it. It just became part of how my guides and my spiritual team assisted me. Keep in mind also when you're doing readings for other people, a lot of times you will channel in a way that will help resonate with them. So if the person's very visual, you'll probably get more visions, more images. If the person's very in tune with their emotions, or an empath, whatever you want to call it, you probably will feel more, because that's just their energy and how they relate to the world and things. So it will resonate with them, and they'll understand the information in a more profound and deeper level, so they can leave that reading really, I don't know. It's like this sense of like that they really connect with the information and it clicks. So it will change. Most people will say that, although I do believe from my own experience and what we talk about when we've channeled from the Akashic Records, that we each have our main way of channeling. And for me, that's feeling. But I do get all those other things as well. Question number 2. How do you get access to the Akashic Records? So the Akashic Records are accessed through what we call an opening verse or an opening prayer. Each teacher, so each person that teaches the Akashic Records, this is the way we learned it and the way that I understand it and the way that we manage this when we teach the Akashic Records, is that we channel our own opening verse or opening prayer for our students. Each teacher that I've studied with has had their own opening verse, which they use and they pass on to their students. I'll go into a few more things here, but there are also teachers that have books and they share their opening verse that way. In my mind, as a teacher, it's good that you connect with your own verse. So I think that helps you really connect vibrationally to your students. And for them, this is why we went into this in the last episode of like being very careful of the mentors, the teachers, the healers that we connect with, and making sure that they resonate with us. It needs to be very unique, and it needs to be something that you truly feel. The same thing when you learn something like the Akashic Records, right? So that will also vibrationally move forward or come forward, or you'll connect with it through the opening verse. It'll be their opening verse that they're passing down to you. It's such a beautiful thing that I understand more and more as I'm on this path of being a reader and a healer, of what we pass on to others, not just knowledge, but our own wisdom and our own connection to the Akashic Records in the 5th dimensional realm. That being said, I do feel like we're in such an interesting and pivotal time right now, and we talk a lot about going from 3rd dimension to 5th dimension. And at least this is also what I see through some Akashic Record readings, that some people don't need an opening verse to access the Akashic Records. It feels like they can think about it, they can set the intention, they can have the vibration, the higher vibration, and connect. That's my case sometimes. I just don't trust it enough to say, like, I'm just going to internally connect with myself and open the records. I can't do that. I can do it. That's probably not the right thing to say. I can do it. I just don't choose to do it that way. I'm very much about rituals. I love the idea of having a process to things. It helps me prepare. It helps me feel more attuned to the energy. I have steps to it. And I know that once I finish the opening verse, the last word, the last item of the opening verse or opening prayer, that I'm ready to start channeling. It's like, it gives me the confidence and the energy to feel like I'm prepared to start to connect. Even though I could get information before I even actually say the opening verse. That's just how I am. And sometimes even when I'll go on the podcast, I'll just set the intention of opening my records and it feels like they open. And I felt a while back actually that I had this weird moment where they were just opening on their own. And I was, especially when I was like doing stuff on social media, like channeling or writing posts or writing a blog post or doing a video, they would kind of just open on their own, which is tricky because you have to make sure that you close them, right? So to me, there's different ways we can access it. I feel like the most aligned way, in the best kind of way, especially for a lot of us that are very mental, practical, rational, ritualistic, that we like having a process to things that we need to get out of our head. The opening verse is the best way. That's how I learned it. That's how all the teachers here that I know do it. And there's different ways you can do that. Like we said, we teach the Akashic Records. There's people that have books. There's many teachers out there. Just make sure you resonate with the way that they connect. Like Lou's even like talked about in the past how she had one teacher once who didn't connect with past lives. And it really kind of like, it was interesting for her because later on she had another teacher that was very much about that. So you have to make sure that you kind of resonate with how they're teaching it, because everybody will teach it differently and there's different ways to do it. So question number 3, why can't we all access the Akashic Records? I do believe that we can all access the Akashic Records. Even at a time when I felt like I wasn't connecting, I was connecting. It's just my ego, my mind, my insecurity, my lack of self-love and reassurance didn't allow me to feel like I was connecting, but I was connecting. I was definitely connecting. I think a lot of people feel like they're not worthy of it. That was my case. It came up in even like one of the level 1 courses that we did. It was so insane. We've talked about that on the podcast. And I had to work on my worthiness towards the Akashic Records, like that I was worthy of opening records and helping people, and that I was a person that was here to do that. And now that's something I've already processed, and I know that I'm here to do this. And not that I didn't know that before. It was more like I had to attune to it and believe it myself internally, which was a process. And also I always talk about how I compared myself as a channel to Lou because she had been doing it so much longer than me, and the way she channeled and how she did things. And I was constantly like, oh my gosh, I'm not getting that kind of information. And I was forcing myself to be a kind of channeler, Akashic record reader, healer that didn't resonate with me. And when I let go of all those expectations and comparisons, I found my way. And I really started to open up as a channel and really receive what people needed to hear from me, not from anybody else. So this question's interesting because I think this is my belief. This is what I see. And even though you might not believe that you can't have access, you do. As long as you have a good intention, you're doing it obviously for the right reasons, and that you really put time and practice into it. Because it's like anything. You have to attune to it. You have to open up to it. You have to practice it. Otherwise, that was my problem. I gave up before I even started. And when I was actually ready for it, we have to be ready for it, right? Why it's good to listen to our intuition and get out of our own way so that we can really fully access the records. The records are there for everyone. We as incarnated souls each have our own Akashic book. It is the book of our soul. We all have the right to access it. So work on, maybe I don't know who asked this question because I don't have the names here, but if you did ask this question, or if there's anybody out there that doesn't believe that they can access it, really question that and question why you feel like you can't access it, and start working on that, because we all have the right to access it. So I know this is my point of view. This is the information I get, but I do truly believe that. The next question is, and I love this question, can you help others using your own Akashic record? So can you help others by opening your own Akashic records Heck yes, you can. So many people do this. I did this at some point without having level 2 when I was just even helping at my 9-to-5 job because I was in a better energy and I was able to help people. We have so many students that have come through level 1. That's obviously they started with level 1 because that's where you start. It's always any kind of spiritual practice or tool that we learn. Even like now that I'm studying family constellation, the first whole year we're learning about the tool, but it's about the work that we do within ourselves, the transformation, the inner kind of journey that we do, the healing that we do on ourselves so that we can prepare ourselves to actually be there for other people. This is the same thing. Why do we start with level 1? We start with level 1 because that's where we start to really understand ourselves, where we start to break through certain limiting beliefs, when we start to release things, when we start to really trust ourselves as channels, where things come up and we can work through them. And this is the same as any other tool, right? But yes, once you do feel it, like you're ready and you feel like you're connecting and you're trusting yourself, there's students that have come through the Soul Tribe Academy that have used opening their own records to do Reiki on people. They're doing it for any type of healing method, really, but Reiki's a big one. Like I've even recommended that to my mom, and she's done that before, and it brings through a lot of messages. There's one friend in particular that I was actually talking to today, coincidentally, and she had this thing where she was getting so many. She does kind of a Reiki and energetic healing, and her thing was that all these messages were flooding her, but she had no control over it. And what opening her own records helped was setting an intention and then having those messages come through in a more organized fashion. So she uses them with her own healings for people. And she was already getting messages. So this didn't change anything in that sense, but it helped her feel more in control of her gift in a really beautiful way. We can use this for any kind of healing tool. And I feel like also, if we think about like if we're a teacher or if we're helping people, I don't know, through charities or as a mom or when you need to be there for somebody, but you're not sure the right words to say to them, or that you feel like you can't be present, you open your records. That's helping. It doesn't have to be helping through channeling all the time. It could be helping through just this very centered, aligned energy that helps the other person feel like you're there for them. But I would say definitely if you're a healer, if you're somebody that's intuitive, you're a channeler, even therapists. Like I can't even imagine like what opening your records could, like it could bring just another level of understanding people and getting this insight that maybe could take a lot longer if you weren't opening your own records. The thing here is, and this is my advice, you're obviously not channeling from their records. You're opening your own Akashic records and asking through setting an intention of assisting the person. And if there are any messages that could help them, for you to be able to communicate those. Right? And obviously free will is a big thing here. So as long as a person's open to hearing that, those messages will come through. In an ideal situation, you would get their consent. You would open their records if you did level 2. So you'd open their records and be able to answer questions or be able to kind of connect with their energy in a different way. But I feel like there's space and there's an opportunity to use both. And what I do sometimes is really interesting. Like, I'll open my own records to do psychic readings. I'll open my own records to do flower essence therapy. I'll open my own records when I sometimes have calls with clients where I'm helping them with a creative project because it helps me connect with their energy more and my own energy and my own creativity. I mean, it's endless opportunities, but you can most definitely, if there are any ideas you have, please DM me, please message me, please email me. I'd love to hear how you're opening your own records to help others. I'm fascinated to know if there's I can't think of any others, but there's tons. I remember we had a student that used to open their records to dance and become more creative and flow. Artists, people that are just in this healing space, acupuncturists, like just so many options here. And it just brings a level of us, it just elevates our energy and helps us sometimes even receive messages. So yes, 100%. The next question is, what is the biggest surprise you've ever learned from the Akashic Records? Oh my God. And I know this question, when it came through, I was like, I better think about this. I better think about this because I am not sure. There have been so many surprises. It'd be hard to pick one, but I think a couple things come to mind that I would probably mention here. First of all, to me, it is insane how when you become an Akashic Record reader for others, when you open other people's Akashic Records, how you're constantly being shown messages for yourself. I get so many messages for me. What the person's going through is like a message for me sometimes, and they'll literally, I'll physically see them pointing their finger at me like, this is for you too. Like that to me is surprising sometimes because it's like we're in a specific topic, but there's a message underlying it that can relate to me and what I'm going through. So that's always beautiful, and it's always like a nice surprise. I've understood things about the universe in a way that like timelines, universe, like past life stuff. I mean, this is both, right? Opening my own and opening others, because even when we open other people's records, our spiritual team's still there. We're still also receiving, and we're getting something out of that reading always. It's always, you're so connected to the person that they're coming to you for a reason, right? They're coming to you with specific questions for a reason, and a lot will resonate with you. And sometimes, like I don't remember if we talk about it in the podcast. I know this is in the course where we talk about the other side of the coin, where sometimes you'll be going through something in your life and a person will come to you for a reading and they'll show you the perspective. Let's say you have like an issue with your father or your mother, and the person comes with the other side of it because they're a mother or they're a father, and they're showing you how they feel in such a similar situation. And when we're in the Akashic Records, it is pure, unconditional love. There is no judgment. There is no, there's never this energy of feeling like we're doing something wrong. It's not right or wrong. It's not positive, negative, although some things might be more higher vibrational than others. But sometimes when we see the other side of it, we can leave a reading having more compassion and empathy for the person that's on the other side of what we're going through. It doesn't mean it's going to change anything or everything, but it just means that we get a different perspective of it, even though we didn't ask about it, but that person's coming to us asking about it. That can also come through if I open my own records and I ask about, what do I need to learn about this relationship with my father or with my mother? Or why is there so much difficulty in these aspects of my relationship with my father or my mother? These are just examples of what we can ask in our own records, right? But surprises, I think, more than anything, it's sometimes how they explain things energetically of situations. I think health is a big one that I see a lot and helps me understand my own health journey. But universal, I think I'm starting to open up more to that kind of energy. And sometimes it'll come through and I'll be like mind blown, especially because the person's asking those questions. So that's why the information's coming through, and it's really, really cool. But I think to me, since I'm such an emotional person, the biggest surprises are just the breakthroughs that clients have when like they have those aha moments in a reading, and you're just like, you feel it for them. And that to me is like, wow, breakthrough. There's like no ego around it. There's no expectation, but the person understood something that they couldn't understand for years, sometimes a decade, sometimes. So those are the surprises that I sometimes, it's like they brought forward such beautiful information for me to communicate and explain that this person understood it. And then it changes everything. Everything shifts. it's just like mind blowing. That's to me, those are the moments. And this is why I always say the Akashic Records are about information so that we can understand ourselves, our path, what's going on, what went on, where we're at, where we're going, where we're putting our energy, what we need to learn, what we need to let go of, all of it. It's beautiful. Alrighty, let's see where we're here. So what's the biggest surprise? And then I'm going to do one more question, and then we'll leave the rest for part 2. So how to ask a good question in the Akashic Records. How to dig deeper into the questions. And I always like to call this like... And we talk about this in the first and second level of Akashic Records, like the detective energy. Like you have to be your own detective. And that is when you're opening your own records, it's the detective energy, or the curiosity also comes through the questions, how you ask them. And then if you're opening somebody else's records, it's through how they ask their questions. And sometimes, and what I found more, at first I was so focused on them asking the question in the right way. And then later on, it just became easier for them. I was like, do not stress about how to write the question, what the right wording is. I'll give examples, right? And we have a whole episode that we share with people when they do a reading with us. And I have even like a YouTube video. I'll try to like link that here. Probably that might help some of you. Like what kind of questions can you ask the Akashic Records? Because that's the whole thing, right? Anything that'll help you understand, learn, grow, expand, let go, connect. All those are great questions. So the best way I can explain it, like a good question would be like generally not yes or no questions. They're not bad, but they're just not the most helpful questions. If you're getting a reading, it's because you want to understand something at a deeper level. So it's usually the questions will be around what lesson do I need to learn from this situation, this relationship, or this thing going on? What's holding me back from whatever? Is there anything pending from a past life? Or what is the soul contract with this person? Are there any karmic pending lessons? What is my purpose and mission? Is there anything that I am not doing or need to be doing right now to help me connect with my purpose and mission, or help me connect with a more aligned version of myself, or to expand, to grow, to heal? Relationship questions are really good. I think since the Akashic Records are all about the soul and their soul contracts, we even have like a whole course we did about soul contracts, which is awesome. And it helps you understand that at a deeper level too, which we thought was really important because it is a big part of a reading. So asking about relationships, we have to remember that we're here connected with soul tribes, sometimes soulmates, and relationships because they're mirroring something back to us. There's a reason why I started studying family constellations. It was something that felt so like aligned with even the Akashic Records in the relationship sense, because I kept seeing over and over and over again how a lot of the things, repetitive things, unconscious things, were coming from things that weren't even that person's. It was something that had been passed down, a belief system, or what they saw growing up, or trauma. So I think any issue, problem, repetitive patterns, dysfunctional things, relationships, all of that, those are all good questions. And the way to go deeper is to not just ask it in one question, right? So it's explaining maybe like, I have this relationship with my sister, for example, and it's this, this, and this. I want to understand why we're in this pattern, what I need to learn from it, and if there's anything that I need to do to change this in this energetic sense of like, is there anything that I'm not letting go of or not seeing to help the relationship? What are my big lessons there? And always, I think at the end, we can always ask, is there anything pending? Past life? Is there a past life? Is there something that I feel, I don't know, like, is there anything that I could continue to learn from this relationship or what's going on? If we think about why we're here, it's because our soul wants to learn lessons, wants to expand, wants to create expansion through this experience of incarnating in the human realm. And it's usually not easy. So the relationships are such a beautiful way for us to see our own issues, right? They'll reflect that back to us a lot of times, not always mirroring it back, but a lot of times in the emotional sense, we can feel when something's off, when something feels like it's not resonating with us, and it can help us see something within ourselves that we need to change or update or look at or heal, because it might bring something up that we experienced with our mom or our dad or our uncle or our grandfather. It's all information that we can get. So the more specific the question, the more specific the answer. If I ask, for example, what's my problem with my mom and what do I need to see? You'll get information, but it's what is this pattern that I'm in with my mom, where I feel this, this, and this? And is there something that I need to learn from this in order to feel more fulfilled in life or be able to get out of this pattern so that I can really fully live my life? Is there anything that I'm not seeing? Is there anything that I need to let go of? Is there anything that I need to understand about the relationship that will help me have more compassion towards this person, or help me put up the boundaries that I need to, or help me just not feel emotionally like attached to this person in a way that's unhealthy? I mean, this is just an example. Obviously, there's millions of questions that we can ask, and we all have to come from a place of genuine curiosity, right? When we go into a reading, going in with no expectation, going in feeling like we just want to find some answers. We just want to understand things at a deeper level, not only for ourselves, but for everybody in our life. Because when we start to shift, everything around us shifts. Our family shifts, our relationship shifts, our work, our relationship to money shifts, our reality shifts, all of it shifts. So it's important that we ask the questions, and why you could do multiple readings, because each reading you could do I'm going to focus on this aspect of my life in this reading. I'm going to focus on this aspect here. And sometimes questions and answer, like you'll ask a question, it'll come through an answer, and it'll be so unexpected what comes through that it just, all of a sudden you have like 20 more questions. And you're like, oh my God, I need to understand this deeper. I need to integrate this, but we have to take our time with it, right? It's not about rushing. It's about fully integrating. This is why I always say, don't rush into getting another reading or any other kind of therapy or session or healing. It's integrate the information, sit with it, understand it. With the readings that I do, I record them so people can listen back and they can really continue to sit with that information and really allow it to make sense sometimes, right? And not everything will hit us at once. It's too much, especially since the Akashic Records are about information. But what I find lately, and I'll kind of wrap up with this, is that with the readings I do now, I don't want people stressing about how they're asking. I say, just write the question in the best way that you can. And we'll work through that together. So I'll work through that in a reading. I never put questions forward for people. I can suggest them because that can be a tricky part of a reading. But as I see things come through, I can understand the kind of questions a person might want to ask. So I can suggest those. But the beautiful thing is when somebody gives you background, because obviously through the Akashic Records, it's not about psychic energy. It's the more information you have, the more you'll be able to channel with clarity and with this kind of sense of wholeness. It'll come through so much more clear, because sometimes when we channel for other people, we don't know them. We don't know what they're going through. Hence why I also don't like doing readings for people I know very well. I'd rather not know you. And even if I do, like, let's say I do a couple readings for you, I don't even remember what I said to you because that information slips my mind. That's part of what happens when you're an Akashic Record reader. The information's not yours. You don't keep that information. So by explaining sometimes and going into detail or even just giving background, the answers just start flowing in a way that's just so beautiful. The person gets the answer that they need without even having to ask the exact question. And it all flows in this divine, beautiful, just energy. It's beautiful. And that's kind of the way I work a lot more now. But you have to write the questions down, even though they might not be in the right or perfect format. It doesn't matter, because you already thinking about that aspect of your life will start to move energy by you just writing that down, by you thinking about it, by you craving and needing and desiring that answer, because you know that you're going to get something out of it. So that information will come through anyway in that reading. I trust that at this point in my journey as a reader, and that's usually how things come through. All right, so we got through 6 questions. I have another 7 for part 2, but I also just did a post on Instagram saying to people that I might be doing a part 2. So some more questions might come through. Part 2 might be a little bit longer because there's some interesting questions for part 2 that I think will be probably a little bit deeper than the first ones. And as I mentioned at the beginning, I will link all of our courses in the show notes. I will link, obviously you'll have my contact form, my social media, my Instagram. Feel free to message me with any more questions that you might have. I'm happy to do tons of these episodes. I love this. This is so much fun. And I love clearing up any questions people have. So everything will be linked. We're hoping to I don't know if you guys remember saying a while back that we want to do like a meetup at some point. So we're still looking into that, and the year is already flying by. It's like mid-February already. So yeah, we'll see what happens with that. And that would be cool, because we can even do like a Q&A, open the groups to Akashic Records. Oh my gosh, I would totally love that. I'm just trying to project out and trying to manifest some things for the year that I think could be really cool. But yeah, I'd love to hear from you if you have any questions or any comments on any of the answers that came through, any of the information. Please reach out. I love hearing from you. I love chatting with you guys. So I'm here, and yeah, wishing you guys a really good week. And I will be back with part 2 really soon. And we have some really interesting interviews coming up in the near future. So make sure you're subscribed to the podcast on whatever podcast platform that you use, if it's Spotify or Apple or whatever, so you don't miss any episodes. And if you do feel called to leave a rating and review on Spotify or even Apple, we would truly, truly appreciate it. It'll help the podcast reach more ears, and it just helps us kind of get this information out to more people. So sending you guys a big hug and wishing you a good week. And we will see you next week with a new episode of the Soul Tribe Podcast.